The special meeting of the Annapolis City Council on Thursday, July 21st, 2022 will be called to order at 5:15. At this time, would everyone willing and able please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Sir, Mayor Buckley.
Here.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Present.
Alderwoman Kendall Charles.
Here.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Present.
Alderman Shannemeyer. Alderman Gay. Alderman Savage.
Present.
Alderman Arnett.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Please present the first item on the agenda.
The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
So at this time, I would entertain a motion to amend the agenda to delete ID 18022 Lennar at Parkside Preserve and its impact on quiet waters, and ID 18122 Rocky Gorge Development, Aries T. Allen Boulevard Project, and to add Resolution R4922 Parkside Preserve Emergency Action and R5022 Rocky Gorge Development Emergency Action on first reader. Could I get someone to move that?
Moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor
Did you
Buckley.
have a question on it? Sorry. Oh,
No, I was going to move the motion, but it was already done.
thank you.
Mayor Buckley.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Aye.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Aye.
Alderwoman Kendall Charles.
Aye.
Alderman Finlayson.
Aye.
Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Okay, so Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item.
The next item on the agenda is petitions, reports, and communications, beginning with comments by the general public.
Thank you. And during comments by the general public, just for 3 minutes, we're on a tight schedule today because there's another meeting after this meeting that everyone has to go to. So if anyone has signed up to speak, please come forward, or if anyone would like to come forward and speak, please come forward, state your full name and address. And just to that microphone and just press the button just to make sure it's on. How you doing?
Can you hear me? So we are representatives of Bethany Court, and
Great.
we
And
are here.
If you just state your full name and address for yourself. Yeah,
Martha West.
Thank you.
913 Bethany Court, Annapolis, Maryland. Okay, now,
Great, thank you.
we're here with regard to Griscom Court, the new development. And we just had some preliminary concerns. Wanted to be sure that there would be a retaining wall or a fence to keep, a fence to keep people from cutting from Tyler cutting that corner through Bethany Court. We have concerns about the wildlife, of course, our urban foxes and our urban deer. And then there's a area where there's a drop off of about 7 to 8 feet. So with the construction, we would like to be sure there's a retaining wall, and we're wondering about the trees and how those are going to be handled.
Thank
That's
you.
it for the moment.
Thank you. So we will reach out to you, Martha, and get Alderman Savage and get a meeting with the city so we can talk these things through. I'm just getting up to speed on this project, so but I know the developer is a quality developer, I believe, and I think he would definitely be open to the concerns, and he's done a lot of work in this city, so I think that he has a good reputation, so I believe that he'll be supportive, but I'm only just getting up to speed with it. Alderman Savage, yeah.
Yeah, just for everybody's knowledge, I did reach out. So first of all, I had a really positive meeting with Planning and Zoning, and spoke with the developer today, and we're going to be he's willing to meet with the residents. I'm going to set up a meeting for next week or the week after to talk about their concerns. And I'm optimistic we'll be able to get them addressed. And Director Laplace has committed to send out staff tomorrow to look at the forest to see if it's changed from the original assessment 7 years ago, and to see if anything needs to get adjusted to that plan. And so I'm happy we have a plan moving forward, and I'll keep everybody posted on that. But and just as reference, this is it's another instance of, this is very similar to Rocky Gorge. It's one of those zombie permits, I call them, that have been around since 2006. And so that's why I had people from across the street who weren't able to make it tonight who contacted me, newer residents, but again, since they're newer than the development is, as far as, and so they weren't aware that they're now going to have 2 points of egress across the street from them. So I want to just get everybody together on the same page, and I'm optimistic that Mr. Pilley and I know staff will help as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the group like to come forward and speak? Okay.
Renee Craven, 918, across the street from Martha.
Thank you.
Where we live, we will be most impacted because we back right up to this new development. And we've been aware of this since, 2007, I think? And so we knew it was coming, but it never came. So all these years, we've enjoyed this beautiful little park setting in the city. And it's just, now that it's here and happening, it's upsetting. And we know we're not going to change it, but we would like to keep in touch with the developer and let him know. And we wrote this in 2021 to the Planning and Zoning Office. We do want some kind of a a fence or something right from the get-go, because once they clear that land, it's going to be open season with the foot traffic. And I don't know. That's really all. And the wildlife. Oh, twin fawns. So anyway, we're just concerned, and we'd like to always stay in touch with the developer, John Pilley. And who's the developer?
Yeah.
But the builder. Who's the builder?
Pilley is the builder, I think. Yeah. Oh,
No,
really?
he's had that property for years.
Right.
I think the sign says Ryan Homes, I think.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. That sign's been up there a while too. So anyway, and they're taking down that beautiful old Griscom home today. It was on the Eastport Neighborhood Forum to go and look at it one more time because it's so beautiful. And it's the old Griscom homestead. It's going to be leveled. But anyway, thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob, you're great to keep us informed. So
I'm encouraged that he wanted to meet with you straight away, so that's
Yep.
a good sign. So thank you so much. Okay, so seeing no motion in the chamber, I declare comments by the general public closed. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
The next item on the agenda is legislative actions on first reader, beginning with R 4922, Parkside Preserve Emergency Action, for the purpose of addressing the development of Lennar at Parkside Preserve and its impact on Quiet Waters Park.
Is there a motion to adopt R-49-22 on first reader?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Alderman Savage.
Just want to give a little context to this, even though I know it's first reader, but I know people are familiar with this project, so I just wanted to explain what precipitated this. This is in response, not necessarily to the pollution that we've seen coming off the site. It's in response to impacts to a stream right off the edge of the property where everything drains to. It's a stream that flows. It's all on Quiet Waters property, so county property, but it's a stream that kind of headwater stream that flows through the park. Julian, do you have that picture you could put up? I only have one. I'm not having a presentation, just a picture.
Sure.
So once it gets that up, you'll see it just shows you the before or after. But I as a profession, as you know, I do stream restoration, erosion control work. I've been doing this for the past 20 years. And so we had a meeting between city staff and county staff and alder person from our colleague from Ward 4 over there from the Environmental Matters Committee to walk the site and go over the issue. And so that you'll see up there on the left is a picture I took back in 2011. And that's what the stream used to look like, is just blackened leaves. And it's an ephemeral channel, which means it only flows during rain events, but also that in this case, it does have a bit of a groundwater influence. And so what happens is the water sits there, it doesn't really move anything, and that's why the leaves just get black and darkened, just because they decay. But what you have on the right is, obviously you see a lot more water has been going through the system because it's washed all the leaves away, and you'll see that lighter area is actually deposited sediment. And so there's been so much water, it's washed the leaves, the topsoil away, and it's actually, you can expose some of the tree roots. And so, again, gave me concern as a restoration ecologist, in the sense that if this isn't stopped, that it's going to keep getting worse. You'll see erosion start to happen, and you'll see eventually this steep channel in the stream form, because it's going to keep getting eroded out. Now's the time, the ideal opportune time to take actions to correct it. And so that's what precipitated this resolution. Originally, I was taking a much more hardline approach of saying we need a stop work order, but I had a positive meeting with staff and the county, and I know we all met with the contractor. And so this really right now is the resolution is supporting staff's efforts. So it's going to be supporting the efforts to get immediate action to stabilize this stream so it doesn't get worse during construction. It's going to be asking that, resolving that, there's a review of what it's going to look like after construction to make sure to see if any changes need to be made. Because this is really, in many ways, reflects climate change. We're having more frequent rain events, a lot more volume coming down in those rain events. And so I want to make sure that we have provisions in place. And as part of that, the resolve statement would say that we would like the city to hold the bond, because there's a $4 million, I think, bond that's held on this project. And so once it's completed, we're going to hold that bond to make sure there's no damage. And if it's built and it works correctly, great, we'll release their bond after 2 years. But if we see erosion, the city can use that money, and the county's already said they'd be willing to work with us to actually do a stream restoration on that part of the property. But again, hopefully that won't be needed. So that, I think, is essentially what this resolution would do. That's all. If people have questions, I'm happy to address them.
Alderman Pindell-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I've reiterated at least 100 times, when it comes to Alderman Savage's, especially, I do trust his judgment when it comes to his area of expertise. He has represented his residents very well, and especially with automatic courtesy, I will support your resolution, Alderman Savage.
Alderman Tierney.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Alderman Savage, for your effort in this. Just one comment. I find it sad or disappointing that we actually have to write a resolution to tell the contractor something that I believe is inferred in his contract. I mean, going by, you know what I mean? I don't think any of this language goes above and beyond what is, especially adhere to the MDE standards and specifications. I think the only thing that differs is that we'll look and see if the permit can be reviewed to determine if greater water quantity volume control can be achieved in order to protect the receiving waters. Who will be doing that? Who will be doing that?
Be doing which part of it?
The page 3, line 5 through 7.
That would be by, so Public Works is already committed to do this review.
Okay.
So again, I just want to give them support because the developer was not very happy about that. But we do provisions in the code that require, that allow staff to do this if there are changes to weather patterns and drainage and things like that. And so this is gonna, so they committed to reviewing it to see if there are any, for example, if they need to provide for more water volume, water quantity treatment, or capture, I should say, in the final design.
So when.
Mayor, if I could
Yeah, go ahead.
add, so that's what the stormwater engineers do. We're talking about two different issues here.
Okay.
And Alderman Savage would say the same, but right now we have an erosion and sediment control during development, during grading operations. What we're looking for in this paragraph that you cited is the post-development release of water, the volume of water. And what we want to make sure is that the volume does not increase. In fact, it should significantly decrease post-construction after everything's stabilized and all the stormwater management's in place. Right. So we're going to go back and look at the plans to make sure, because that was all approved as part of the grading permit. So we're going to go back and make sure that it's going to be adequate and that it's not going to discharge more water than it did pre-development.
That's how I see this, is really a statement of quality control measures, really. I mean.
It's just sort of a relook at the plan that we have in place now to make sure that it's going to be adequate.
Yeah, and again, that's partially because there was some confusion on the developer's part on whether or not we had that authority. So I think this helps just to clarify that the intention of the code and that it's there for this
So the
very
meeting,
purpose.
sounds like the meeting went well yesterday.
Fairly well. Sheila helped mediate between
Oops,
some of us, but
thank you.
Yeah, if I could just add that, so subsequent to the site visit that the two older persons were on, there was a meeting this morning between staff with the city and with the county and the developer, a follow-on meeting to talk about the actions that will be taken. So we're definitely supportive of this resolution, but those actions that we're asking for in here are already taking place. And we brought the county in because it is Quiet Waters Park, so it's their land that this water is discharging onto. So they've been very helpful. They're very willing to meet and help us come up with recommendations for the developer. Next week, there's going to be another follow-up to the engineer for the developer is going to go back and look at all the recommendations that were discussed today and redline the drawings as necessary to make changes.
And regarding the county, I just want to say our council person, Lisa Rabian, she was at the meeting and she made a very important point. I feel like she emphasized that, look, you are calling your project Parkside Preserve because it's right next to Quiet Waters. You need to take care of the park. And so I think they got that point, and I'm really glad she was there to make that known.
Mr. City Manager, that form was a dumping site for a lot of things. They brought a lot of stuff out of that in the original efforts, right?
It was in the past, and they're still removing a lot of that concrete debris and other debris that's on the site. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, all those in favour? Is it a roll call or is it just a... Yeah. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item. Thank you for being here. Cheers. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is R5022, Rocky Gorge Development Emergency Action. For the purpose of addressing the Rocky Gorge Development's Aris T. Allen Boulevard project, a 23-acre site platted for 48 single-family housing units, calling for the immediate stop work order on site development and requiring a report on the project. Is that accurate?
I'm not sure if that's accurate, but parts of that in it. Is there a motion to adopt R50-22 on first reader?
So moved.
Second.
Could I get a second? Thank you. Alderman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have tried to provide you, not only in the resolution, but in my emails, some background on the need for this resolution. 2006 was the year that the Rocky Gorge property was named and approved by the Planning Commission. Since then, this project or this property has gone through no less than 4 different development sites or companies. For one reason or another, those developments have been discouraged from moving forward. About 6 weeks ago, driving down Aris Allen Boulevard, I noticed the bulldozers were on the site, clearing. I immediately called the planning director, Mr. Laplace, who had only been here for a couple of weeks, to inquire as to what was going on. And after a couple of weeks, I had an opportunity to talk to staff, who informed me that, yes, the project was going forward. The plans that are being used were the plans approved in 2006. I shared my concerns about a number of things, one being that the community has changed significantly since 2006, yet the same plans were being used. I raised concerns about the property changing hands without any notification to myself or the residents of Oxford Landing. I shared my concerns about the fact that any traffic study that had been done would have been done probably at least 5 years ago, because each developer who came in had different discussions about the traffic and how it was going to impact not only the community, but anybody driving on Forest Drive. At least 2 occasions, State Highway Administration came in and gave us their recommendation on how to enter and exit this property. The new developer, who I believe signed documentation to move forward on June 1st, had not shared any information at all. As I said, I was never notified as the alderperson. The residents of Oxford Landing, whose properties back up to this property, had not been notified. And so I inquired as to how we could make sure that this project moving forward conformed to the requirements as well as the neighborhood. The residents whose specific properties back up to this property have been told by the contractors that their fences are on their property, the developer's properties. So of course, those residents are very concerned that one day they're going to come home and their fences will be gone. The fences were put up by their original developer. And so there are too many questions, too many unanswered questions on this property, on this development that is very quickly moving forward. The movers, the ground movers, earth movers are out there almost day and night. And so that too is one of my concerns. All of a sudden there's a great urgency to get this development well on its way. I have worked with the planning department on other issues. The very last developer was here in the fall, I believe it was. And they were strongly discouraged from moving forward. They were proposing a workforce development product, which I think this entire council had adopted that as a proposal moving forward, that we should pursue workforce housing in the city. The development that's coming in, and since I haven't had an opportunity to talk to the developer to find out specifically, I have a good guess that this is not a workforce development product. As a matter of fact, I know that it will contain, I guess, 6 or maybe 8 MPDUs, which tells me that the price point is going to be considerable. So there are many, many questions that have to be answered, I feel, to not only this body, but to the community at large. And so I know this is a drastic step. I think this demands drastic action. We are about to go on hiatus for the next month, in which case there's lots of progress that could be made on this site without us having any of the answers that we need. And one other piece of this, which is a big piece, the only egress into this property is through Oxford Landing. And if you know anything about Oxford Landing, and it's Yall Road, which is the main road that connects from Bywater Road, winding through the property and winding through the property of Oxford Landing, and entering this site is a normal street with cars parked on each side and barely enough for two cars to pass one another. And it's right by a playground. You know, in looking at or having discussions about previous developments for this project, the big concern for the community was traffic and their children. So again, questions not answered. We don't know how the developers plan to mitigate the problem of an inadequate roadway going into the development. So again, many questions that need to be answered, and sooner rather than later. So I implore you all to support this. It is on first reader. We will have an opportunity, I hope, to address some of the concerns that we have, because I share the community of Oxford Landing with Alderwoman Pindell Charles. She's got one side of the street, I have the other. But I have grave concerns about the unanswered questions for this project. So I would ask for your total support on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Pindell Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alderwoman Finlayson indicated that this project began in 2006. I jumped on this train when I came on the council in 2013, and like she indicated, there are 9 streets in Oxford Landing. 5 of them she represents, 4 of them that I do, and one of the ones that I represent is Yall Road. And that, when I came on, there was a big issue concerning traffic. At that time, it was one of the developers, I think it was maybe in 2016 or 2017. There are 216 households in Oxford Landing. I knocked on every single door one very hot day or weekend, and 90% of the households I got a signature from to indicate that they were very concerned about the traffic that would be coming through Yall Road back to Rocky Gorge. We at one point had gone to Baltimore to meet with the State Department of Transportation. So I've been accompanying Alderwoman Finlayson on many occasions concerning Rocky Gorge. She knows the entire history. Like I said, I jumped on board later on, but the residents are extremely concerned. 90% of the households signed a petition indicating that they were concerned about the traffic going back there. Some of the ingress and egress we had talked about was off of Aristide Allen Boulevard or off of Bywater Road, but also through Yall Road. And they, as she indicated, cars parked on each side, and you have to stop for another car to come through from the other end. So we've had conversations, meetings with the residents. We know exactly how they feel about this. But as she indicated, it was supposed to be workforce initially, and we're all very supportive of that, but it seems like that's not the case. So I am extremely supportive of this resolution, and you can add me as a co-sponsor, Madam Clerk. Thank you so much.
Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to address a part of this too, and I do think drastic action is warranted because they are moving quite quickly on the clearing of the property, and I think we really need to reach back out to the community to get them hear their concerns, but also particularly from a forest conservation standpoint. This in particular, there's been quite a lot of change, and so there are larger issues here with, you know, it's 2006 approval, which had been extended and told repeatedly by the council and by staff. And I think we need to look at that practice as far as these older permits that are, because obviously this is a big impact. I think we've all had projects in our ward, and I've had two. They go through the process pretty quickly, include a lot of public input, and the alderperson's input, and it goes smoothly. But with these older ones, it just people are surprised by them and lose track of them, and so there are also it's a planned unit development. This one as well as Griscom, and what I've found is that the code needs overhaul. There are a couple of loopholes. For example, forest conservation. I didn't realize it. But in the 2016 legislation that was passed, and then I didn't notice for the revisions, it basically exempts all planned unit developments that had approval prior to passage, prior to 2016. Completely exempts them from the new forest conservation. And so it's kind of, why are we doing that when it's almost 20-year-old forest at this point? It's changed over that 20 years, right? So there's also a loophole in adequate public facilities, because we're taught there's a concern about traffic, and I haven't gotten this confirmed yet, but when I looked at it, it says that basically the certificate of adequate public facilities doesn't expire if they have a final record plat approved, and the final record plat was approved back in 2016 when the Board of Appeals approved the project. And so that exempts them from all of the new changes that have been made to the adequate public facilities, this nearly 20-year-old 15, 16-year-old project. And so I think we need to look at that as a council moving forward at some point. And also look at the public notification requirements. Clearly, if a project is over a certain age, we should have periodic public comment periods or something along those lines. But in any case, back to the forest, I'll end on this, is that, as you know, there's a tornado that went through there. And I think the director's committed to send staff out to look at the forest to see if it's changed from, I think, 8-year-old approval for the forest conservation work. Because if it's changed, they might need to revise, or the department might need to revoke the approval if it's significant enough to get a whole new plan. Even though the tornado didn't impact, we don't know yet how it impacted the conservation easement, but we don't know how much of the site has been impacted yet. But you can look at the area, all these downed trees, and so the conservation plan for forests, one of the things you look at is management. How do you manage the forest once everything's built? If there's no management, you're going to have invasive species like vines and things coming up on all these trees. Because once the big trees fall, the invasives go wild because they have all the sunlight, right? And so they may need to go in there and manage the conservation easement. And so that would need to be amended to the conservation plan, or a new one would need to get done, I think. But anyway, that's why I think the urgency is for stop work orders. Before more trees are cleared, I think they need to get an assessment of what may have changed out there.
Just a point of info, I don't think we have page 2 of the resolution. Oh, thank you. Where, electronically? Okay, thank you. Okay.
Alderman Arnett's next, then Alderman Gay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's the history of this
Hard
project.
copy doesn't have it.
The history of this project has been troublesome from the onset, and a large portion of that.
Oh, okay, it's not that long.
Alderman Arnett has the floor, please.
A large portion of the problem has to do with the traffic through Oxford Landing. I think the aggravation for me was that at the Environmental Matters Committee, we've been getting regular updates on these projects, and all along we've been assured that this project was dead. So hearing about bulldozers showing up, but more importantly, and I think one of the things to consider and a reason why I time out, Alderwoman Finlayson and I attended a presentation at the Planning Commission about a proposed affordable housing project that could have been considered here through one of the many owners. And one of the breakthroughs in that hearing ultimately the project didn't come through, but was the notion that we really do have to provide relief from this community via a light on Aris T. Allen, and particularly since there's now some talk about development on the other side of that. And I think that would help the community, both existing community, but also help this community and the project that's being considered on the other side. So I don't know whether there's the ability to go back and reconsider that, but certainly relief for the people in Oxford Landing is something that has always been on our mind. And I think we need to do whatever we can do to provide them consideration and hopefully some relief. So I will be supporting this resolution.
And we could just, for the public, point out that the Planning Commission did not support the access on Aries T. Allen. Is that right?
Actually, the state didn't support it back during many of the things. The Planning Commission did not support that for the various stages of this project. But I think that these things, as the alderman from Ward 7 said, things are changing all the time. And I think that we need to be thinking about potential of changing our thinking on this as well and going back to the state and talking to them. So, that's one of the reasons why I think we need to take a time out to think about this now that we know it's alive again.
Thank you. Alderman Gay?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will obviously be supporting the resolution introduced, not for environmental purposes, not for traffic purposes. We need housing. We're in a housing crisis. And I think the fact that, like the alderwoman, I'd been told that this project was dead in the water. It's not my ward, and I obviously give aldermanic courtesy. But I had discussed a number of times with our Housing and Human Welfare Committee, our Housing and Community Equity Development Commission, the plan for affordable housing at that site. I know the staff from both planning and zoning well, they're all in planning and zoning, I'm sorry, just under different departments. The staff in planning and zoning, in particularly under community development, and when Ms. Nash was here, were very supportive of us going into the direction of some sort of workforce or affordable housing here. I think we have seen a presentation from the task force, and they laid out a clear plan for us, and they've let us know that if we continue to, under the current zoning structure and plans that we are, and continue to support single-family developments, we won't have any more land left. We won't have opportunity to develop anything, commercial or residential. I think this is a slap in the face to do 48 single-family houses when we are in one of the craziest housing crises since '08, really. Obviously, I was only very young in 2008, so I did not go through the 2008 housing crisis, but I know what this crisis has done to families and friends and just people across the state. I think it's unacceptable. And I'm also just extremely curious how this got past all of my colleagues and I. We really had no idea. And so I'd like to be informed in particular on projects in my ward moving forward on status updates, et cetera, just so that we aren't caught off guard and that we don't have to look like the bad guys because everybody's up in arms saying, we're stopping development and that's the reason there is a housing crisis. No, the reason there's a housing crisis is because we're building 48 single family units instead of what could be 256 on a site like that. I think there just has to be a thorough investigation into this process, but I look forward to supporting the amendment, and I hope that you at least are able to get everything back on track in the ward, definitely. Both of you.
Alderman Tierney?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I haven't had time to talk to Alderman Finlayson about this, but I was just going to suggest it would be an amendment, but I think there needs to be more clarity in why the stop work order and what we want to have addressed. So I'm just phrasing this, not verbatim here, but for example, on page 2, your sentence says, until the city reviews the permits and approvals under which the Rocky Boulevard is allowed to proceed and determines whether these documents are current and in full effect. I would like it to continue and say, and in full effect, specific to the aforementioned issues and in compliance with forest conservation laws, stormwater management, and affordable housing requirements. Do you know what I'm trying to do? Rob's shaking his head, right? I mean, in full effect to what? I mean, what are the issues that we want to address? Whether it's in compliance, the aforementioned issues that you could say in the whereas, but also in compliance with the forest conservation laws, stormwater management, and affordable housing needs. And all those issues need to be addressed before.
What line?
Page 2, line 25, it's just a continuation of line 25. Does that, did you?
Again, I don't.
Yeah, I'm gonna
I don't have
need-
a page 2.
Yeah, I'll need your wordsmithing if you agree with the concept. I think we need more specifics. And so on page 2, line 25, I would continue the sentence, is allowed to proceed and determines whether these documents are current and in full effect, i.e., e.g., E-G-P, specific to the aforementioned issues and in compliance with forest conservation laws, stormwater management, and affordable housing requirements.
May I, Alderwoman, are you including traffic?
Traffic, I can.
And there was something else.
Traffic,
If you look up in line 15 and 16, it speaks to public safety, traffic, and land encroachments.
But before
that's-
you
Yeah,
go
all
too
those-
far, Alderman Tierney,
Yeah.
no amendments on first reader.
oh, okay, I'll talk to
Okay, that's
Alderman
fine.
Finlayson about it later. Yeah, I'll review with Sheila for Alderman Finlayson first.
On we go.
When is that? I need clarity on the amendment rules because I'm hearing a lot of new stuff that I've never heard a lot this week. When has that been a rule that we can't amend it on first reader?
I've got an expert right next to me here.
You can amend on first reader. You can accept the document on first reader. It's already been seconded. Only thing you can do now is move the bill.
So it can be her amendment can no never
You
ever.
amend on second reader.
Okay. So is that efficient for time for you, Alderwoman? To wait till Monday to amend it?
Well, that would give you an opportunity to get the wording right with Alderwoman Tierney, so I'm fine with that.
I wasn't aware that this was on the agenda for Monday.
Say that,
I said I wasn't aware that this was on the agenda for Monday. Because you just adopted it today, we had no way of knowing whether it was gonna be referred to any committees or anything by any of the alderpersons, so.
Alderman Savage.
There's a point of information on that. I think I submitted the request today to be added to the agenda. Resolutions don't have to go to committee. And they also, I think, can have public hearing at the same night as the final vote. I mean, there's urgency behind both the resolutions, but just to,
So for clarification, you requested a public hearing?
no.
I'm saying that's, because that's the only way a resolution can have one, if you request it in the meeting. That's all I'm saying. We had to wait to see what you guys were gonna do, and the agenda goes out tomorrow.
I understand. Yeah.
Just for clarification though, but if it's not on Monday, then we would have to wait until September, which would give them a month to do whatever they want to do in between. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Alderman Finlayson.
my intent or my hope is to have it on the agenda for Monday so that we can act on it, just as the Alderman said, because it's timely. I can work with Alderwoman Tierney and anyone else that has an amendment you'd like to see added to this and introduce it on Monday night. One other, or two other things. SHA, the second time they were here, Mr. Mayor, you said that they didn't approve it. The second
Planning
proposal.
Commission. Planning Commission.
Planning Commission, okay. SHA came at least twice with two different entrances to this property. They did approve the second, which was not the proposal that's being proposed, but another one that had an entrance closer to Godspeed Way, which is where the proposed light would go. So there's additional information here. There's, like I said, there's been several reiterations of what this property and this development could look like. The current developer had no involvement in any of the previous plans. So, thank you.
Alderman O'Neill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. In light of all of these that seem to have come full force at us in the last 7 to 10 days, is there a way, I guess Director Gerald, that we could, City Manager, that we could get a report on other projects that were approved at some time and never went forward? Or should we be watching this because it seems like we're doing emergency management versus having a list of projects that have been approved in the past, whether they're 2006 or 2008?
Mr. City Manager.
So the answer is yes. So Director Laplace has already agreed to start providing updates like were formerly provided to a number of the committees. But I would just ask what the intent of this resolution is. A long time ago, the City Council delegated to the Planning and Zoning Department and to the Planning Commission to approve these projects. So the council doesn't receive these projects for approval. They go to Planning and Zoning and to the Planning Commission. So everything, we know the tortured process that developers go through to get approval of projects. And this has been an especially tortured process, but they now have approved permits, legally approved permits. And now what you're asking in this resolution is for the Director of Planning and Zoning to issue a stop work order without any legal basis, simply because you think that the city code doesn't accurately do what you want it to do, and you're acknowledging that it should be changed. But that doesn't affect this development. And you're also wishing that there were different types of housing units that were built, but we have an approved development here. So you're asking the Planning and Zoning Director to issue a stop work order that he can't legally issue. And you have no authority to issue a stop work order.
I can give some extra information after that, but Alderman Finlayson.
Thank you. Mr. Gerald, I can tell you what my intent is. My intent is to slow this down so that the community and my colleagues are comfortable with what would be moving forward. I totally understand that this is a resolution and that they're not binding. It's the will of the council. And that is what I'm hoping will impact our planning director, the will of the council.
But he cannot issue something that is not legally permissible to issue.
There's a question about what is legally.
No, the city attorney's already opined that
Mr. Gerald, I think that there are some issues that need to be delved into a bit deeper. Okay? And I know the planning department does a great job, but I also know that certain things are encouraged and certain things are not. I can tell you, and I can count off issues that I have worked on, that the Alderwoman has worked on, to encourage movement for certain products and certain people. We are in a place now where we could make a difference to our community, to my community. And that is what I want to see. I want to see care given to the residents of Ward 4 and Ward 3. Okay? Whether the approval was in 06 or 14 or whatever the year, traffic has changed. Communities have changed. The environment has changed. And we have no grounds to respond when those things occur and have a negative impact on the community? I think we do. I think we do. And I know the law department saying we don't have a right.
That's right. So you're putting staff, and I know you don't like to do this, but you're putting them in an untenable position because you're asking them to do something that they can't do. And you're putting all these expectations on them to do something that they can't do because these permits were legally issued. We have legal permits, and that's what they're operating under. So under what conditions do we say you have to stop work while the city council goes back and reconsiders all of the conditions that were approved?
Well, I'll tell you. It's something that should have happened before the
But
first.
it didn't. I agree.
But let me finish. Let me finish, please. And I'm not talking years or months ago. On June 1st, when the final approval was given, there should have been an opportunity at that time to inform me and the community of what was coming. So what we can do now, the mayor's already put some of this in place. We get the developer here and we share with him what our concerns are. And if he's genuinely interested in our...
Please don't shoot the messenger. Please don't shoot the messenger.
I'm not upset. Let's be clear. But I am passionate. And I am tired of people telling me that I'm upset. I'm not upset. I'm not angry. Am I disappointed? Oh, yeah. Okay? So I want an opportunity to hear from the developer. More importantly, I want him to hear from us first. And then I want to hear how he's willing to adapt to the concerns that we have. Now, I think I have a right to do that.
And we're making those arrangements. As you know, there's a meeting tomorrow with the developer that you'll be participating in, and we will talk about the future meetings with the community. But this isn't the time for meetings with the community to get their input is early in the development process, right? Before they do the full design, before they get all of their permits, that's when those meetings need to be held. At this point, all that work's been done, and they have an approved permit. So we're going to meet with them and they can explain to the community. And if they're willing to take recommendations from the community, God bless them. That's what we would love to have. And then they'll have to change the development, which, you know, why anybody would agree to have to go through the process again with a changed development, I don't know. But that's what we're arranging is those types of conversations to see what we can do to address the concerns. But right now, back to this resolution, you're putting these expectations on planning and zoning and on the gentleman that's sitting back here, our brand new employee, to do something that he can't do. He can't issue a stop work order. There's no legal basis to issue a stop work order.
Mr. Gerald, this is a resolution. I know that. I'm well aware. Mr. Lyles gave us that ruling a couple of days ago.
But why put these expectations instead of just letting us work through the process that we're talking about without the resolution?
As I've said, it's going to be too late. Have you driven Y'all Road? Really?
I have.
Recently? Have you seen the entrance?
Probably not in the last 6 months.
Okay, well then you need to drive it today or tomorrow before we meet with the developer. You need to see the entrance to this community that goes between two houses. And it's amazing that there's even enough land to allow that road and give a buffer on each side for the neighbors. So look at what's happening out there.
No, but all those considerations should have been made early in the process. And I know they were because there was a lot of discussions and we went to SHA and initially they turned, because I was in public works, I was involved with all these discussions. And initially, SHA said, no, you can't have access to Aristi Allen. Governor Hogan came into office. There was a change in the view of that, and they actually granted right-in, right-out access. But then the Planning Commission sort of vetoed that because they didn't think that was a good option. So that's where we are right now. Planning Commission approved it without that Aristi Allen access. Everybody has to use Y'all Road, but we have an approved project now. So we have to figure out how we deal with that at this point. The reality is that we have an approved project. They've been through all of the steps in the process to get here, and they have approved. So not that I wouldn't like to change it, but we don't have a legal basis to do that now when we have an approved project.
The community has legal options, I believe. I was hoping that as the representatives, we could come up with a solution for this. The second time SHA came in and gave us a recommendation, it was an acceptable one. Different developer, different plan, different entrance, and the likewise. You know, the big issue is how far one goes from the exit to the property down to the light to take a U-turn to go west on towards 50. And one of the proposals moved the road further up near Godspeed Way. There are other options that could be considered, should have been considered. Okay, but we're going to accept something that is not advantageous to us, whether they went through the process or not. You know, do we just let it go? And I know you're saying yes.
No, I'm not saying that, yes. I'm not at all saying yes. I'm saying that we meet with the developer, and then we have public meetings where the developer's there. And if the developer is willing to accept any of those and make changes, great. That's what we would love to have happen. But he doesn't have to do that because he has an approved permit.
But can I just add in something here? Because I have spoken to the developer under Alderman Finlayson's instructions. He asked us to reach out to the developer as soon as possible. The developer is very concerned. He's a Maryland-based African-American developer, and this is his first project in the city. And he has said to me, I want to get this right. I want to work with the city on this development. He's so concerned that he's flown back from the West Coast, and he'll be in the meeting tomorrow as requested. I fished ideas of the entrance on Aries T. Allen, whether he'd be open to that, open to those ideas, adding additional parking. I'm sure he'd be open to the idea of maybe not going through a Yall Road if that's a possibility. All these things will be on the table. He's responded immediately, I think, because we've only just learned about this, all of us as a council. But when he bought these pre-approved lots, these 48 pre-approved lots that had been approved for maybe 15 years, I think, he had no idea about the things that we're talking about here. I think he is going to be open to all the things that we're interested in here. And you believe, and some people believe, that the potential of the site is much greater than what we're doing. So I'm sure if we could find a way as a council to add density, to increase the capacity of the project, we would all do that. But that itself would have some backlash, I'm sure. So I'm sure that if you doubled the capacity of that site, we would also hear some different thoughts from people in Oxford Landing as well. These things can be discussed tomorrow. This developer has recognized the urgency of this matter, and he's going to be here tomorrow. And I think that speaks a lot to this project, as did Mr. Pilley, who's going to meet with the residents in the first thing that we talked about. So he's moved in an efficient manner. We have a legal opinion that you know about that we will read into the record now, if I can hand it over to Joel. And Ashley's opinion is we're going to read that into the record. Alderman Savage had his hand up.
May I
Gay had his
respond to
hand
you,
up.
Mr. Mayor? And it's a brief one. If I had not introduced this resolution, we would not be having this discussion. And that's the unfortunate part, okay? Because everything would have gone forward without any word from us or anything. This was necessary.
Yes.
So, thank you.
From the Office of Law, in total, our analysis is this. The City Council may pass a resolution expressing the desire for the Director of Planning and Zoning to issue a stop work order in a particular development project, but such a resolution cannot be binding upon the Director or other Planning and Zoning staff. Pursuant to the City Charter and the City Code, the City Council has previously delegated the authority to issue a stop work order to the Director of Planning and Zoning. Accordingly, The city council cannot direct the director to issue a stop work order or issue a stop work order on its own. To do so will be violative of both Article 4, Section 2 of the city charter and Section 21.36.010 of the city code. That is the summary of our opinion, and that is based on the fact that the city charter in Section 2C says the city council shall sit as the planning and zoning authority of the city, except for those functions delegated to the Board of Appeals, the Planning Commission, or to the Planning and Zoning Director. And as previously discussed in Chapter 2136 or 10 stop work orders, that authority is vested solely in the hands of the director and the staff, but they must exercise that authority with a rational basis and in good faith based on the city code that is currently constructed. Thank you.
I'm going to go around the room. So Alderman Savage had his hand up, then Alderman Gay, then Alderman Pendell Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And regarding the legal opinion, that's for the opinion on whether or not the council has the authority to give a direction. It doesn't have to do with the authority of city staff to issue a stop work order, and which I'll get into that a little bit. But as far as the council, we could, if that's an issue, maybe it could be reworded before Monday. As far as we do, I think, have the power to resolve. We can resolve whatever. We can resolve that the sun turns green. You know, it's still. We can make a resolution as far as what we would like to see happen, that we want the city to do X, Y, and Z. I mean, we still do have the authority to oversee the delivery of municipal services, and this would be the delivery of, in many ways, the planning and zoning service, as far as the zoning authority. And so, and also to establish intention, which Mr. Lyles has made clear, through resolutions. So if there's a concern, if there needs to be clarity added as far as the intention of a particular part of the code. So back to the issue, you know, if the developer's so concerned, he should tell his contractor to stop work. Got a meeting set up imminently, just stop the work. But as far as the legal authority for a stop work order, I have to respectfully disagree, Mr. City Manager, because there is a clear legal authority under the Forest Conservation Act. Specifically, whether or not you apply the new law, the 2016 law, what existed before, the same provision was in there because it's in the state model ordinance, and that is the Revocation Clause. A forest conservation permit can be revoked by staff if there are change in the conditions on the site. If somebody wants to tell me a tornado is not a change in conditions in the site, I don't know what would be a change if that's not. So that gives them the authority to revoke approval to get a new forest conservation plan. And that would give them the authority to invoke the stop work order clause underneath the Forest Conservation Act, because they can't do work without a valid forest conservation plan. If it's revoked, they don't have a valid forest conservation plan. Right there is your authority, legal authority, to put a stop work order on the property. I've heard no opinion, seen no opinion from the law office that denies that ability. Even if they do come up with it, the point is it's an opinion. My understanding is the law office does not issue edicts. They're opinions that can be honored or not. I know there's been previous administrations where that's come up in the past. We are asking that the city manager and the city side for the public good. This is clearly for the public good, whether or not you want to just look at the forest or the overall discontent. Our goal, public servants, first and foremost, we're not developer servants, we're not anybody, public servants. And so I think this is a case where we need to put a pause. We're not talking about a couple months, well, I mean, ideally, hopefully, but you never know, but just put a pause on this, and we can get some new plans and new reviews on this. So that, I think this is really clear in terms of how the council feels on this. And to that point, I'm going to work hopefully with the primary sponsor, and I do want to be a co-sponsor if I'm not already, to basically and work with Alderwoman Tierney to improve some of the forest conservation references in here, because I think that, but I think it does, I also wanted to mention approval. It's mentioned that they have legal approval, but that is something we have questions about. I know this project has been told and extended over the years, but at the Environmental Matters Committee, it was stated that, because we were told, as the Alderwoman said, and I got the email from 2020, we were told by staff, or actually Alderman Arnett said this, that the permits were all canceled. And we breathed a big sigh of relief because of all the grief we've gotten. And then it just popped up again, which we were surprised about. But what staff said is that they canceled their cancellation. Canceled their cancellation in light of an executive order that we still have questions about. Because when I looked at it, it looked like portions of the executive order were discretionary, executive order from the governor, I should say, not the mayor, from the governor. And so it mentioned discretion, but it also mentioned public hearing, and there was no public notice about any of this. So that, in my mind, raises questions in our mind about whether or not this is legal approval. And so that, I think, is another reason to just put the pause button on this so we can figure out. And that's why I think the Alderwoman asked for a report in this, to look into that and report back to us.
So you're questioning the governor's thing?
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, it's written, the way it's written, it said discretion and public notice, and we didn't have any of that done.
So we were talking also about the exposure to litigation from this as well. That's protecting the public too, Alderman Gay.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm trying to figure out how we have 5 well-paid city attorneys and can't a single one of them produce something to support its counsel with a project like this. It's so interesting because I feel like every time we have something like this, the opinion from law is always at us, and then it makes us look bad because then we have to go ahead and not follow the opinion of the law office because we're actually trying to do what we believe is in the best interests of our constituents. My first question is, if it was brought up or mentioned again in 2020 and then later in 2022, by 2020, the city manager and the staff knew the will of the council to move forward with affordable housing, to go forward with affordable housing. That was our focus and that was our goal. When we pass resolutions and ordinances, how often do you follow up with department heads and staff to actually make sure that the will of the council, or even in some cases the will of the people, the public, because they bring forth a lot of the issues, are followed through on? Because I know for fact by 2020, especially because that was COVID, we had been in heated discussion as it relates to housing development, workforce housing, affordable housing, whatever you want to call it. Did it not come across the planning staff's mind, maybe this is not in line with what we hope to do? It's not even in line with the 5-year development plan.
So by 2020 for this development, all of the basic components of the development were already in place. It wasn't like in 2020 they revisited and said, oh, we're going to build all these single family homes. That was all put together well before 2020.
But didn't they come back to us in 2020 or 2022? Either way,
I don't know.
It was within the last 2 years they've come back to the city to move forward with the project. It just would be nice if when we actually pass resolutions or we actually all agree on something, that the staff could be directed to follow through on what we've suggested. They never want us to direct the staff. So how can our objectives be met?
So 2 thoughts about that. One is that ordinances are more binding than resolutions. But resolutions we try to follow as much as possible. For example, the change in the stormwater treatment levels, that was a resolution that was passed a few years ago. Public Works follows that 100% to the letter of the resolution. And that's the more normal process, is that staff tries to follow all the resolutions.
Yeah, well, this says here in the whereas clause that they did revisit it in September the 16th to be exact of 2020, which the staff would have, I mean, by September of 16th of 2020, we had already started to produce our housing affordability reports by then. It's just shocking and it's disappointing because the way I see this working is that we'll probably pass this. You don't want him to release the stop work order, so he's probably not going to do it. The Office of Law is going to fight it. They're going to move forward with this project. The rich get richer and the poor continues to get stuck in the city of Annapolis. And it's sad because I feel like we have a decent body and we all agree, in particular on some of our vulnerable communities and the assistance that they need, and particularly in housing affordability. And it shocks me that we would continue to move forward against our best wishes. How does this get approved after 16 years like that? And they move forward with the project, they got bulldozers and all this stuff out here, but they're talking about community character for affordable housing projects on Forest Drive. I don't get it. I personally do believe that in the planning and zoning office, there may be certain staff members, I'm not sure, that believe that single family housing and moving forward under the current direction that we in is the better option for the city. Maybe they think it's the best fiscally, maybe they know the develop, I don't know. But I feel like every time we get to projects with housing affordability or housing development, there's just always some issue that sets us back, and it does seem a little sketchy. Lastly, I'm interested in if moving forward all projects, I know we used to get the updates, but I like to get them personal in our Housing and Human Welfare meeting, probably from the Director of Planning and Zoning, or the planning staff that he would see fit. I think it'd be appropriate if they would come before us and give a presentation on what's in the pipes, timelines, dates, what should we expect, et cetera, just so that we are well educated on what's coming up.
Absolutely.
Alderman Pindell-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm going to go back to the community input. Like I said, I think it was 2017, I knocked on 216 doors and got petitions signed by 90% of the households saying that they had concerns about the traffic and this development. And I think, and I'm pretty sure, that I gave a copy to the Planning Commission. Now, I don't recall if I gave it to Planning and Zoning. I don't know if what information or documents that the developer received, but I will be bringing a copy of those petitions with me tomorrow to the meeting. Because if those documents are part of the developer's packet that they receive, then the developer knows the will of the people who live in Oxford Landing.
Alderman Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess three things. First thing is, I look at this resolution as the will of the council. I understand we cannot direct and all that. But I think we have to realize, using sort of common sense, that since 2006, we've had a pandemic, the tornado, we've had very significant forest conservation, very significant MPDU legislation. We're currently doing a traffic analysis on Forest Drive, city, state, county, et cetera, all of that stuff, and stormwater too. So it just, common sense sort of tells me that before the job goes, that we all should have an understanding of what has been looked at and sort of a timeline, just a timeline of what we're looking at here. I think that's super understandable to me. I watched the Environmental Matters meeting, and you know how I am with document control. What I didn't hear asked is, or what I heard was that there have been several owners and developers on this property. So my first question is, how can a 2006 grading permit how can it be transferable to a new owner, and how is that done? And I don't mean to put anyone on the spot, that's just a question I have relating to, it appears that we're looking at a grading permit dated back from 2006. We're using it now with a different developer, and I don't know how that has been assigned and what is the legal vehicle to do that. And, in other words, how is this 2006 grading permit being reactivated? When what I also heard at the meeting is that this in situ construction work to date, the construction work to date was constituted as vested, meaning that we had done enough so that we don't have to reevaluate certain parameters. So that was another question I had, is who decides that? What constitutes a vested project under Maryland law, or is that a discretionary decision? Those are the questions. That's basic, grading permit 101. I just needed to know, how does that, I don't know if you want to speak
I'm
to
not
it.
sure if Director Laplace can respond to
if
those.
you'd like
I
to
don't mean
come-
to put you on the spot, but if I can tell you that for the grading permit, it was updated at some point, I'm not sure exactly when, but it was after the resolution to increase the stormwater treatment, because they did in fact strive to get to 125%. They only made 122%, which is short, but based on the site conditions, they got it up to 122%.
So that's-
And Matt Waters agreed with that level of treatment.
So that's the
So that
discussion,
happened relatively recently, because that was, I think, just what,
Okay.
3 years ago?
And it's been the same ownership, I believe, all along until the new person just bought this property.
Okay, it sounded a little bit confusing at the environmental matters meeting. But that's a perfect example. To me anyways, you just tick the box as far as stormwater management, but these other issues have to be talked about, the forest conservation and the MPDUs. I don't know if they were grandfathered or not grandfathered. Do we know that? I just think we are owed some sort of a timeline on that. We are to verify that we are in compliance with what was at the time, the code, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's really understandable. So to me, this resolution is sort of a timeout, and even if it takes 48 hours or something to realize that we're okay or we're not okay.
So we are telling you, or we are being told, that they are in compliance,
Okay.
right?
Again, I think we can do the things that you want us to do without direction to the planning and zoning director to do a stop work order. We can report back. Yeah, trust us, right?
Trust but verify.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank
That's
you.
not-
I appreciate the vote of
That is your-
confidence.
Yeah, that is our problem.
And I could go there, but I
Thank
won't.
you.
But I don't appreciate that.
Yeah,
I'm saying,
Coming from you especially,
Yeah.
please.
well, that's what you say all the time, Alderman Gay. It's very disrespectful.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 40 years. How many years have you been doing this?
I've been doing this for 3, but I
There
haven't
you
made
go.
a mistake that like this, or
Oh, you made
Don't,
plenty.
don't say you can't trust me, though.
Order.
Yeah, get your city manager, because there are plenty of things.
Yeah,
Eh,
Alderman Savage, thank you.
Thank you. Just so I can answer some of the questions. As far as the grading permit, those are transferable to a new owner with authority from the director. The director has to sign off on that.
The director of planning and
Planning and
zoning.
zoning.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry, Public Works. I'm not sure which director, but one of them signs off, and I know that was done on this project. I can't remember
And
when.
that's the other variable. We've gone through 3 directors.
Well, that's an important point, because that's discretionary.
Well,
Doesn't have to
understood.
be transferred, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where if we make our will known, I think that's where I think it's important to come to the council as far as that more often for this kind of thing. As far as MPDUs, just to point out one thing, and when I looked up all the NPDU legislation since 2006, there's a lot. There are tons of changes to that law to make, for example, one allows Navy employees to utilize NPDU housing. And I don't know if they can do under this since they're grandfather. I don't know, but
And it was fee in lieu of. We got rid of fee in lieu of recently, so.
yeah, we
which
did.
way are they
So,
going? Yeah.
but as far as so I hear you, city manager, as far as you're uncomfortable because you've been told there's no legal path, but what I'm asking, I guess, is I firmly believe that there's a legal path using the Forest Conservation Act Revocation Clause. I think there's a very good case for that given the tornado impacts. So if there's a potential legal path, is the administration willing to look at that? Because it's clearly the council's will that be considered as a possible path. So if the law office can confirm that is entirely legal for the council to do, is that something they can be willing to look at?
We will look at all options, but let's have the meeting tomorrow with the developer, right? The developer.
I know, but the point, I mean, at this
And
point,
we're going
you're
to
right.
vote on this, and we're all going to vote for it because it's on first reader, so it's going to pass. So
But again, if things don't get resolved, again, especially as it pertains to the forest, trees are getting cleared down every day. Even out there now, I just sent Alderwoman Finlayson sent me a picture of a new path that's carved through the forest, and she's asking me if the trees are allowed to come down, and I can't compare because what's in the new grading permit are these old 2014 approvals, so they have no accounting of what's actually out there now and what's permitted. I can't even decipher them. So there's a bit of an urge to I'm just trying to relay as far as the environmental, because once they're removed, it's too late. It's too late. And so that's why I think there's some urgency.
So we should vote on this because we're all going to vote it through. We are going to work, we all want workforce housing. There's been one owner of this property and plenty of different proposals for that property. And we know, I've spoken to the former owner and he said, I would have loved the workforce housing projects that were proposed. But he didn't, those developers decided not to move forward and he was left with on-selling the approvals that existed. So that's where we are. That's a summary of it. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's meeting. So we will call the question. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
The agenda is completed.
Anything else for good order? All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all those in favour, say aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Mr. Mayor, I'll see you at 7 down at Annapolis.
Yeah. Where's the main entrance to that?